Oh, it's nice to be here. The music. We have a choir at our meeting, but they don't sing very often. I wish they would sing more. My wife leads the music. She has a wonderful voice and is a marvelous pianist and vocalist. And I myself am tone deaf, which I make up for by singing as loudly as I can. And so we stand up there in our Quaker meeting and we lead the singing, and I lead the congregation astray, carrying them down paths they should not go, and she goes out and gathers them up and brings them home safely by the end of the hymn. So to be in a congregation where everyone is singing on key and the same words at the same time is a joy. It's one of the things I fell in love with about my wife when we began dating. Gosh, 38 years ago. We drove up together yesterday from Indiana, where the leaves are starting to turn color. It rained and on Friday, and the wind blew and the leaves started coming down. Not all of them, of course, but enough for us to note the trend, to see where we were headed. It's easy to be in love in the spring, with the cruelties of winter receding and the promise of summer before us, but to still look at your spouse in the fall time and be in love, well, that is the test, isn't it? We met in 1982. My wife, Joanne, was attending Indiana State University in Terre Haute. Now, first, a little Indiana history. When Indiana was founded in 1816, and delegates from all over the state met to decide what would go where, Terre Haute failed to send a delegate. And so, in their absence, everyone else said, let us send every vile and foul-smelling factory to be in Terre Haute, Indiana. And so Lafayette got Purdue, Bloomington got Indiana University, and Terre Haute got a paper mill and all kinds of disagreeable things, which practically almost killed our romance. I would drive down to Terre Haute to visit her on the weekends, and the smell just hung over the town, and I asked them, what in the world is that? And everyone said, it's a paper mill, which wasn't the truth at all. It was the 1886 sewage treatment plant, which needed extensive repair and had not received it. It spewed hydrogen sulfide, which you'll remember from your days in chemistry, smell like rotten eggs. Someone once said after visiting Terre Haute that Terre Haute collected sewage and held onto it as if it were a savings bond. This caused me, as you can imagine, to dislike Terre Haute. And later that year, in 1982, when Terre Haute was destroyed in a dastardly plot by the Nazis in the Steve Martin movie Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, I, along with everyone else in the theater in Terre Haute, stood and cheered. Like most prejudices, my contempt for Terre Haute was rooted in ignorance. I didn't know at the time that that pungent city on the Wabash River had given the world the finest Hoosier who ever lived, Eugene V. Debs, the American socialist, political activist, and trade unionist, imprisoned in 1918 after giving a speech denouncing American participation in World War I. Convicted under the Alien and Sedition Act, he was sentenced to prison for 10 years. 3 years later, President Warren Harding, busy appointing his friends to positions of high power and reeling from the revelation of his extramarital affair with Nan Britton, nonetheless took the time to spring Debs from the hoosegow with the presidential pardon. Alas, not in time to spare Debs' life. Prison proved so debilitating that Debs died from heart problems caused by his time in jail. It makes me wistful, though, to remember that there was once a time in America when presidents who had committed sexual improprieties were deemed unfit for high office, but that was another time, and we will not go there for now. Back to Debs, lest I stray too far from my point. On the day Debs was sentenced to prison, the judge asked if he had anything to say for himself, anything he could say in his defense. And Debs stood and uttered perhaps the most Christian thing ever said in an American courtroom. He said, "I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence." The judge was unmoved and sentenced Debs to 10 years for the unforgivable crime of speaking against war and economic injustice. There are times when I wish with all my being that we could wrest open the set-in-stone Bible, which history and tradition have not permitted us to either add to or subtract from, and place for all eternity these words alongside the Gospels and the prophets. I am opposing a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. Wouldn't you love to see that in Scripture? We could put it where the book of Revelation is. No one would ever miss it. And now here we are 100 years later, and Deb's words still ring true. Today, the top 1/10 of 1%, the top 1/10 of 1% of Americans hold more wealth than the bottom 80%. And the United States now equals Russia and China in income inequality. The concentration of vast wealth in the hands of so few has real and terrible consequences. It means less medical care for everyone else, less education for everyone else, less food security for everyone else, less chance of advancement for everyone else, less housing, less retirement assets, less financial opportunity, and less happiness for everyone else. It guarantees you and I, our children and grandchildren, will be more sickly, more mentally unwell, more hungry, more troubled, more exhausted, more victimized by unjust laws that favor the rich, more likely to die sooner, more likely to be victims of violence, more unable to care for our younger and older family members, and more unlikely at the end of our days to share and enjoy the harvest for which we have labored, which in my opinion makes America's wealth inequality uncaring, immoral, and most of all, unchristian. It is time, long past time, that the church said what Eugene Debs said 100 years ago, that we oppose a social order in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. It is time the church said that. Now, when did this start? I happen to know. The era of oligarchies, which we're still in, began 80,000 years ago in what is now East Asia, when humans were hunters and gatherers and lived in small, tight-knit communities. On a beautiful autumn day, much like today, a man out for a walk witnessed a fight between two woolly mammoths who simultaneously and fatally gored each other. The man was elated, since the woolly mammoths not only provided food, but also warm and durable hide for clothing and shelter. He ran back to his group and told them what had happened. The village people, not the rock group, but the people who lived in the village, gathered up their tools and ran to where the mammoths lie. They butchered the mammoths and carried the meat and hides back to their village. It took 2 entire days, and by the time they finished, they were exhausted, but also delighted, because now their village had sufficient food for the winter ahead. The villagers were so grateful, they decided to hold a feast. But the man who had found the mammoths first wanted to give a speech. He stood, thanked his fellow villagers for their help, saying, "I couldn't have done it without you." He told them he was going to give them 1 entire woolly mammoth tail for their efforts, and that if they wanted any more meat and hide from the mammoths he had found, he would be happy to sell it to them. And that is how the first oligarch came to be. I'm sure there are students of history here who remember this. As you can imagine, his fellow villagers were upset. They'd worked 2 days preparing the meat and hide and hauling it home with nothing to show for their efforts, so they met and decided not to buy the meat until they were treated fairly and justly. And that is how the first union was formed, the United Meat Packers Union. It's still in business. This is all true. You can look it up. It happened 80,000 years ago. Now, legend has it that the mammoth's tail was kept as a reminder of that unjust day and passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years until it finally came to be owned by a Palestinian carpenter named Joseph, who gave it to his son, who used it to drive money changers from the temple in Jerusalem. This is the legend. I haven't been able to verify this yet, but I'm working on it and I'll keep you posted. 78,000 years later, nearly 2,000 years ago, a man named John was born in a small village near the Mediterranean Sea. Some called him the Baptist. One day, when asked how men and women ought to live with one another, he said this: anyone who has 2 shirts should give one to he who has none. And anyone who has extra food should do the same. Well, people liked the idea so much, they decided to form a new religion around the principle of sharing and generosity. And it was a wonderful idea. Some people even did it, though not as many as claimed to. Most everyone else found it hard to do, afraid if they shared with others, they wouldn't have enough for themselves. And so they made up sayings like, God helps those who help themselves, and charity begins at home, and a fool and his money are soon parted. All those sayings made the oligarchs feel better about not sharing, and made the poor think they were to blame for their poverty. And so here we are, all these years later, living in a country in which it is possible for one man who does absolutely nothing that is useful to amass a fortune of hundreds of millions of dollars, while millions of men and women who work all the days of their lives secure barely enough for a wretched existence. Now we stand at a crossroads, deciding which route our nation should take. Will we go the way of the oligarchs, where the rich do what they wish while the poor suffer what they must? Or will you and I create a different kind of nation, where those who own much but contribute little gratefully share with those who own little but contribute so much? Time and again, Jesus showed us his preference. Now it is time we showed him ours.